So this is the new Draeger Resuscitair Infant Warmer. As you'll notice, we have on the head wall, oxygen and air. We have plenty of those hookups. So we could do twins, a twin delivery, or if the NICU team from another facility comes, they can hook into our air and oxygen. It has 3 plugins, one for the warmer, one for the monitor, and one for the scale. So those will need to be plugged in when in use. On the back of the machine, there will be tanks as well for transport. And those hook in the same as our previous machine did and have the straps to hold them in. There is a tank wrench tethered to the machine. And along the bottom of the machine here, each wheel has its own lock except for the front left wheel. This wheel has the steer and straight functions. So if you're going down the hall and you need to turn a corner, and you're noticing it's pretty hard to do, you probably just need to adjust this wheel or check your locks to make sure you didn't leave anything locked. On each side of the warmer, there are these foot pedals for up and down functions. We no longer have the button on the side that we have to push, but each side has access to controlling that. We have the tray table along the top here for any supplies or anything that we need to hold onto that we may need during a resuscitation or birth, as well as these tray tables along the front, both this one and there's one along this side as well. These, important to note, have a 5-pound limit, so you don't want to put anything too heavy or let anybody sit on them, anything like that. 5-pound limit on those. The drawer opens from both sides, so you can access the drawer from both sides as well, and it has a tray table. Supplies will be figured out as to where, if they'll be in the drawer, or we do plan on putting the red box on the bottom with more resuscitation equipment as well. On the side here, once again, from both sides, this is accessible. If you lift up the side rail, you can pull this out for a radiology cassette for x-rays. And there are the numbers and letters that correspond with the side of the bed for lining up the cassette with the baby. And that, like I said, is accessible from both sides. Moving along to the front of the device, you have your handle for moving the warmer around and for steering down hallways. If you pull out on this little knob, you can adjust the tilt and angle of the bed. And to make sure you are level, there is a level with the bubble there. You want to make sure the bubble is between the 2 lines to make sure that you are completely level. But if you are doing x-rays or a certain procedure, you might need to tilt the bed. So that is how you would do it right here. This end piece comes down as well, same as before. Moving on to this side of the machine. Once again, drawer is available from this side, foot pedals from this side as well. And then down here, we have our suction canister. A lot smaller than our previous suction canisters, although it is bigger than our DeLee style suctions that this kind of replicates. So this has a 40 ml capacity, and you'll also have your DeLee hooked up to the end of the suction. So essentially you'll have 60 mils that you'll be able to collect in specimens from the baby. This also has this filter here because this side goes to the suction machine. This filter is going to keep any secretions from going through the suction canister and to the machine, which would damage the suction machine. So when you are cleaning up after a delivery and getting rid of any used equipment, you're going to disconnect from here, and this portion all the way to your suction device are going to be disposable. This will come, as of right now, as a kit with the filter and the suction canister all in one. So when you hook up your new one, you'll hook it up to that suction tubing and slip it into the holder. Tuck it all in here and close the door so it actually looks nice and presentable, and it's out of sight. If we need bigger suction canisters, those do fit in there. Currently, we're going to stick with what the manufacturer recommended, which is that size. Moving on to the front of the machine, the top moves side to side. So if you're doing x-rays, that's a good time to move the machine side to side. Up here, as far as the column goes, a lot of things are the same from before. Your power button is still right here, still powers up and goes straight into pre-warm mode. Remember that we never want to put our baby into the warmer when it's in pre-warm. Pre-warm is strictly just for warming the bed for use later on when baby is born. Once baby is born, we're gonna toggle up to either manual or baby modes, whichever one you like to use. Still have the same timer, reset buttons, adjust temperatures are the same, still have your light and your lock function. This little icon is new and it doesn't light up, it doesn't do anything, it's not a button. It's basically a person reading a manual. It's the company's way of reminding us that if there is a problem with the machine, they strongly urge us to read the manual first and then contact them. So that's what that little button means, or icon means. Blender is the same, still goes from 21 to 100%. So make sure that you adjust that accordingly based off of what your baby is doing. Suction. Suction on and off. Suction is basically the same as before. Do remember that you can turn your suction on and it will not do anything unless you turn your tanks up. Okay, so those work together. I'm going to turn them off so they're not super noisy for us. Moving our way down, we have our Neopuff hookup, and then we have our oxygen outlet for a simple mask, nasal cannula, whatever oxygen delivery device you want to use. That is located right here. One change will be our flow rate for the Neopuff. Instead of using 10 like we previously did, the manufacturer recommends we use 15. That is so that the colors on our airway pressure relief knob and the colors on our airway pressure gauge will match up, the yellow, the orange, and the red. So we can use 15. Nice part is if we're not using tanks, since we are able to hook up to the wall now, we don't have to worry about changing tanks as often. It will still work if you revert back to the previous method of doing 10, but 15 is recommended. Moving down, this is a big change right here. If you look at the patient outlet, right here, patient outlet 2, it used to say on our devices 100% oxygen, because no matter what your blender was set to, this gave 100% oxygen all the time. Now, this is actually hooked up to the blender, so any oxygen given through the machine will be blended. So if you're gonna give oxygen by blow-by through a simple mask, nasal cannula, or any other device hooked to this nipple here, you're going to need to turn your blender to whatever percent oxygen you need. I would recommend turning to 100% if you're gonna run off of this outlet because of air entrainment with your masks, your nasal cannulas. Turning to 100% will give you the most accurate reading with those devices. And then in the weaning process, rather than lifting the mask away from the baby, I would wean by using the blender and slowly decreasing your oxygen to room air or whatever is tolerated for the baby. So that is one of the huge changes. The flow rate remains the same. So whatever device you're using, you use the appropriate flow rate based off of that device. And that's adjusted right here. Moving down, the gas supply, air cylinder, oxygen cylinder, those will not have a reading unless you have 1, tanks connected, and 2, your tanks are turned on. You want to make sure your tanks are turned off when you're hooked to the wall, for the fact that if your tanks are turned on, even though you're hooked to the wall, the tanks will drain first, and then it will start using the oxygen and air supply from the wall. So always make sure that you have your tanks turned off with the wrench in order to make sure that you're using oxygen and air from the wall versus draining the tanks. And as always, you have to turn the switch on in order to get any air or oxygen, whether it's being fed from the cylinders or from the wall, to go through the machine. So that is this column here. Everything is basically the same minus a few of the changes like with the patient outlet and the blended oxygen. Moving on to our scale. The scale is built into the bed, so we can weigh our baby right here in the bed. There's an on-off button in the very back that you're going to want to turn on and let it do its self-check. There's 4 buttons. There's a gram to pounds, there's a 0 button, there's a reweigh, and a weigh. So if my baby is born and we put him in the warmer, we're working with the baby, and now we want to weigh our baby, which will be this bottle of sanitizer. Leave the baby in the bed and hit the scale button, hit the weigh button. You'll notice this lights up telling me to lift the baby up. So I would lift my baby up. The scale is zeroing right now. Now it's telling me put the baby down. So I put my baby down and it's weighing the baby. Once it beeps and the baby is no longer illuminated, the scale has committed to a weight. So this baby weighs 1 pound, 3 ounces or 551 grams. If I didn't trust that, or if I wanted to reweigh, that's where that reweigh button would come in handy. The representative for the company said that they recommend just doing a full reweigh with the initial weighing where you zero it. If you have a baby coming from a C-section and they're going to be coming from the mom straight over to the bed, to the warmer, you could hit that 0 button and it doesn't go through the whole lifting of the baby. And once it's zeroed, then when baby comes to the warmer and the doctor sets the baby in the warmer, now you have your reading. We're still in grams, so we're 550, and we could also switch over to pounds and ounces. If you're done with the scale, turn the scale off in the back, and now you're done with that. Moving over to our monitor. Monitor turns on with the green button over in the top left corner here. Every time it turns on, it is upside down during its initial check. That is because this screen flips, so if I turn the monitor that way, the screen will flip as well. It's always going to come up with, do you want to discharge your baby or discharge the previous patient? You can always hit discharge. Because we're not hooked to Epic and we're not directly communicating, you will notice there are a few options on here that we don't use. So there's a lot of buttons that you won't have to be messing with or pushing. Working our way along the side of the machine, there is a standby button. If I tap that, just puts the machine in standby. I can tap anywhere on the screen to make the screen become active again and start getting readings. Review only works if we are hooked to the monitoring system, so you're not going to be able to look at any previous readings, so you won't need to mess with that. Menu is, again, another screen that you shouldn't really have to mess with just to get monitoring on your baby. But there are some screens in there you might want to explore. But everything is set up the way that we are hoping to use it here at Riverview. Views, on the bottom left here, view 1. This will always be your initial screen, and it is always in Neo mode, no matter what view or no matter what you do. It's always in Neo mode, so you don't have to go and change anything. Just tap on your views. There's 5 different views, so if you like something better, you can always just use that view. When you shut the machine off and turn it back on again, it will always revert to this initial view 1. Code button does nothing because we are not hooked to the interface. Discharge, you don't need to mess with. Alarms. Under alarms, there's alarm volume %. It's always at 100% unless you turn it down. You cannot turn it down below 50% without administrator access. And then record really is one of those buttons that we're not using either because not being hooked to the interface. Alarm silence is right here. Blood pressure is here. Now the other thing is if baby is going to move to a warmer or to mom's chest and we need to take this monitor with us, the button on the top here that has 2 pictures of a lock and an unlock, you just push back, push down on these 2 buttons here, and now this pops up. This can travel with baby. Just bring your cords with. It is battery powered, so you'll be just fine with that. And as I said, the screen does flip no matter which way I have it. Okay, putting it back in, you have to just line it up here, click it into place, those pop up again, and then do the lock. Now it's not going anywhere until you unlock it and pop it out. If you're going to use this quite often, you know, for over the next hour or 2, whatever, I would just use standby mode because then it will stay quiet. It's beeping at me now because I don't have it hooked to a patient, and so that's why it's upset with me. But I would put it in standby mode. If you're done using it for the day or whatever, then I would shut it off by holding the button for 3 seconds. It says shut down the monitor. Yes, shut down. Then it makes that beeping noise. So if it's middle of the night, you might not want to use that button as to wake up mom or dad or whoever's in the room as well. So that is the warmer and all of its new functions.